the drawing here too, so.
I'll keep the gears turning. So my name's Tim. I'm a flipper and wholesaler. This particular one was a wholesale deal I did up in Camden, New Hampshire, it was right off exit 25, right down the road from Plymouth State University. I was a little excited getting off the highway, seeing Plymouth State over there, bring me back to my early 20s. But I get up there to look at the property, and the gentleman had a mobile home on its own land. And I was like, oh, awesome, there's some value there. I'm not dealing with a park or anything like that. I get there, and he has illegally divided this thing into a duplex. And when I say duplex, I mean he built a wall halfway through the mobile home. And the kitchen was on one side with the bathrooms. And then there was this gentleman who was on the run from the law using a literal 5-gallon bucket. And there was also about a 20 to 24 foot camper on the property. And this gentleman that owned it, apparently his father had bought it for him as a wedding gift about 20 years ago. And he had some type of domestic situation with his ex-wife. She was supposed to be in rehab. There was a lot going on here. But he had left the property about 8-9 months prior to that. And there's the gentleman that's on the run from the police, his ex-wife on one side, and then a family with 2 kids in the camper. And there's no running water or electricity. So it's already a really sad situation. And now this guy that's selling it, he had gone on Zillow and said it's worth $200,000. And I said, well, maybe in a perfect world. But we're pretty far apart. So I had offered him somewhere in the vicinity of like $50,000 to $60,000. We didn't get anywhere in the negotiation. And then it kind of comes to a head. I'm like, well, you should list it. Good luck. He goes off on his own, and then he calls me about a week later and says he's going to get tax deed. The town called him. He's going to lose the property. He owes $3,581.23, and they're going to take his property. I was like, well, I will meet you at the town hall. I will pay those back taxes, and then I will give you $40 grand for the property. So we had that deal in place. I met him at the town hall 3 days later, paid the tax bill, and then we closed on the property. It took a little bit to get him to close, but I was going to wholesale the property, and during that time I had to go up there a number of times to talk to the tenants and see when we could get them out, or quote unquote tenants, see when we could get them out. And the gentleman that was on the run from the police kept telling me that he was in a gang and he had 2,600 operators around the country just waiting for his word. And I just kept saying, well, that's pretty cool. That's crazy. No, it's scary. I was like, I don't know, that sounds pretty cool. I'd like to have that. So, eventually I defuse him. We get to closing. We have the contract assigned. It's a nice assignment for us. And the gentleman that we assigned it to wasn't too familiar with how this process worked, so he was a little difficult to get there, but we got it all closed. And then about 10 days after we closed, there was a news article from the Plymouth local news. They had burned it down. They burned down the camper and melted half of the house along with it. So this is why it's important to have insurance when you close on a property. And that was my horror story.
I seen the place.
Is your horror story that you didn't have insurance?
Oh, I didn't have anything to do with it.
Oh, okay.
Renovation. We were maybe a week or 2 into it. We had everything all cleaned out, all the floors up, cabinets out. Everything was kind of just empty, ready to start putting back together. And I don't know, we left for a day or two. We weren't there for, I think it was a day or two. We were gone. And when we came back, there was shit all over the floor, all over some walls. The whole bathroom was soaked. The subfloor was all soaked. And we're like, what the hell happened here? So talked to the park manager. We kind of figured it out. Turns out while we were gone, they were jetting the sewer lines with high pressure water, and they run this thing through, and it shoots water backwards and pushes this wedge forward. And somehow it had blown up all the sewer straight out of where the toilet was. We took the toilet off, so there was nothing stopping it. So it just all like went up, and it was all over the floors and everything, like I said. So we're like, I'm not cleaning this up. My brother's like, I'm not cleaning this up either. So we We call Surf Pro.
Oh.
Which I'm like, all right, this is gonna be a waste of time. So they come out, they're like, oh, it's gonna be $15,000 to clean this out. So I'm like, nope, I don't think so. So then we talk to the park manager again. He's like, all right, I'll call my dad. He'll know what to do. So his dad comes down. He's like, just cut a hole in the floor, get a garden hose, bring it in here, and a little squeegee, and spray it out, and just push it down into the hole.
Nice.
It's dirt down there anyways.
Yes.
So I'm like, well, all right, that's not a bad idea.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, but it's gonna be there
And
forever and
then,
smell.
yeah, luckily I had an assistant do that over there. So the only good part of the story was, at least I went back and forth with the guy who owned the jetting company, and I think he paid us $2,500 sort of out of goodwill, because I don't know if it was his, it wasn't really his mistake, but it was a big mess for us, and at least he gave us something for it. So and there was a good ending, because we ended up cleaning it up and nothing smelled and everything was clean and sanitized again, and we
Good.
dumped some bleach on it maybe or something. Yeah. Kills. Yeah, I put little oil-based kills on all the floors. And someone's living there now, and they never complain. They have no idea.
Yes.
About a property that my client, she's been looking for a restaurant space or a catering space for a very long time. And I found one off market, and I was talking with the other agent. So I introduced this to her, and it's a property that recently sold, but I have a memory of an ant, so I just wrote down some things. So I think they were asking $500,000. We offered that cash, quick close. He said, maybe I'll go, onto the open market. So we were just like, fine, whatever, $515. So he accepted it. So this property is in Goffstown, and I'm not going to say the name of it, but it's recently sold, and it had some seafood. So anyway, so we go under contract, and then about 3 weeks in, he goes missing, the seller, completely missing, no idea where he went. The agent representing him had no idea where he went. And a couple weeks later, he's like, oh, sorry, I was in China, I forgot to tell you guys. So that was kind of weird. And then in the contract, I had written that basically he was selling not the business, the restaurant business, just the equipment in it. And so there was a hood and refrigerators and a lot of appliances, and we took down the serial codes of these, items to make sure that they were going to transfer day of sale. We had the title company look to make sure there was no liens on those items, there was no liens on the property. And he actually, he owed quite a bit of money going to closing. But anyway, so the day before closing we show up, and he was supposed to remove everything but the items that she was purchasing. So we show up, everything's still there. There's tons of stuff in the basement that was really heavy, that was broken, that needed to leave, nothing was done. So we called the agent and said, listen, we're not closing until those items are out. We're gonna walk away, so figure it out, because we're coming back in the morning. So my client calls me that night, and she's like, Cassie, I'm here, and I just was like watching, and they're here, and they just have themselves, they're not taking anything out, they just went in, and then it was like an hour later, and they come out with just the crab legs and the alcohol. And then, so the next morning we go and take a look, and they threw a party. And they unplugged all the refrigerators with the leftover, the chicken nuggets, the everything. They broke things, really weird, because the whole transaction, we never had a complaint, there was no issue, so it was just bizarre. So I'm like, hey, do you want to close? I told my client, you don't have to close based on this stuff. The title company was cool with just, helping her figure that out. She's like, no, really, I just want to get this over with. So then a couple days later, she calls me and she's like, they're here with the truck and trailer. And I'm like, who's that? And she's like, the people who own the equipment that I just bought.
Oh.
So all of the serial number, everything was forged. So yeah, and I don't know why I've just had a black cloud the past year with transactions, because there was nothing we could do. We look back and what could I have done differently? It's just when people are fraudulent, they're fraudulent. And what's interesting, and most of you may know this, is at some point it's it's not worth going after them, you know what I mean? Like, it's just move on and make money the right way, and hopefully karma's karma, so, yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Cassie. 4 serial numbers, wow. That's a nice.
You know, after the crash market. So this is the first time I use a hard money lender. And everybody know Ann Bellamy, so she was a broker. We buy a house in Merrimack for $78,000. So this is already nice. This is what the price for foreclosure then. So Ann Bellamy bring the hard money to take a look to see if she gonna give us some money. It's February, snow on the ground. They come with a small car, and they got stuck in the driveway. So we try to figure out how to get out. I find a piece of plywood laying on the floor. So we put it under the wheel, try to get the car out, and sit in a driving seat. Me and the lender pushing the car, and put the gas, the plywood fly, hit the lender, cut her legs.
Oh.
She's on the ground crying, and I'm like, the nightmare that I see my point go up and my interest go up. So this is my nightmare, but lucky she was okay. We take her to the hospital, and she survived, and I got the loan.
So we own a 4-family in Manchester. Ryan actually manages it for us right now, but before he was managing, we were actually doing it ourselves. It was we bought it and it was just a nightmare. You know, tenants didn't pay, just the worst conditions you could imagine in these apartments. Eventually, we got them all kicked out. And, got new tenants in there, and Ryan manages it nicely for us now. But we're actually selling it now. But so this was probably, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years ago, right after we had bought it. You know, I just happened to stop by the apartment, gonna check it out. I went into the basement. You know, just this basement. It's got, you know, just all the heating system stuff's down there. There's it's a dirt floor. It's dark. There's like no lights. So I go around the corner, and there's 2 people in the corner hiding like under one of those like marathon blankets you get after you like do a race. And I mean, I almost like, I can't say it here, but I almost crap my pants basically. And I was scared. I was like, what are you guys doing in the corner? And they said, oh, we were running from somebody else that was chasing us, and we ran into this building and into the basement. I was like, well, you guys gotta get out of this basement. So luckily, there was no confrontation, and they got out of the building. But in the corner, there was like all kinds of needles and spoons and all kinds of stuff. So I'm pretty sure it's not the first time they've been hiding out in our basement. So after that, we actually put a padlock on the basement door so nobody else could get down there. So that's my quick story.
All right, thanks, Mike. I need 2 hands to count the amount of times I've gone into a basement and gone, holy shit, what are you doing?
Yep.
All right, so I'm gonna take you guys back to the 2019 when I bought my first rental property. Good time. I was a couple years into the business. I'd done some multifamily deals up until this point, but this was the first time that I actually managed a property or bought a property myself. Going into this building, the whole thing was a horror story, but I'm only going to talk about one particular unit and one particular resident in this building that was my horror story. When I went to look at this building the first time, the owner was older gentleman. He was about 81, 82 years old, very, very timid guy. He would knock on the door, give it a, whenever he was knocking to go into the unit there. Just, he was scared of the residents of this building, of course, which made it all the more exciting for me when I eventually took over. I bought a 4-unit in Concord, New Hampshire. I paid $243,000 for this building in 2019, which tells you something about the condition of this property. And 3 of the tenants there were paying weekly rents, or rather, they weren't paying weekly rents because all of them stopped paying as soon as we bought the property. And Ryan, I have some extracurricular images, if you can pull up your email there, I sent you over a photo. It should tell everybody here all that you need to know about this property. My favorite resident was in a 2-bedroom apartment, 2-bed, 1-bath. They were paying $180 a week in rent with all utilities included.
Ooh, gorgeous.
And so this was at the walk.
I love it.
And these were my Satanist tenants.
No.
This is their bedroom. They painted the walls black. They painted the floor black, and weirdly the ceiling was white. And you can see all the crucifixes on the wall. You can see the nice red and white and black beam that they have going on there.
Gorgeous.
They got that little devil skull right above the mirror over their bed there. And this is just the bedroom. We had some other interesting literature, shall we say, scattered throughout their apartment involving individuals who are no longer with us but committed some crimes many years ago. And they were very unique people here. So anyway, I ended up purchasing this property and they stopped paying rent immediately. So we had a property management company at the time that was taking care of the building. We filed a demand for rent and eviction notice against these residents, and of course they immediately stopped paying rent, were very confrontational, wouldn't let anybody into the apartment. So about a month goes by, we're going through the court system, and as time goes on, I got a text message from my property manager about 10 o'clock on a Tuesday, Wednesday night, whatever it was, and it was just a link to a news article for the Concord Monitor. And the Concord Monitor had reported that my tenant, who lived in this building right here at Thorndike Street in Concord, New Hampshire, their apartment had been raided by not one, not two, but 3 separate law enforcement agencies. The Concord Police Department, the New Hampshire State Troopers, and the U.S. Marshal Service all raided this apartment in a coordinated effort to get my resident out, who was wanted on some petty theft charge, and then 2 other individuals, one who was wanted on distribution of methamphetamines, and the other one was wanted on attempted murder charges. And all of them were arrested in a sting operation that evening. And of course, my tenant was let go on bond. She went back out and she moved right back into the apartment along with her boyfriend and whoever else was living with her at the time. So we can continue down the eviction process. We're 2 months in. We finally get the writ of possession. The sheriffs go there. They tell everybody they have to leave. They have a big mess in the apartment there. There was a few things, of course, that we had. There was a nice, one of those punching bag mannequin things. You know what I'm talking about? Where they're like the rubber version of the guy that you can kind of like practice on there. Yeah, he was hanging out in the front porch, and the residents were very concerned that they could come back and get this guy. I think they're called bobs, I think that's what they are. And he had about 40 different knife holes all across this mannequin here, I might add. So I don't know what the value was with this mannequin anymore, but they really wanted to make sure that after they were locked out, they could come back and take him. So very important to them. Regardless of whether they were allowed to come back or not, they went back into the apartment. And they entered into the apartment via the window. They broke through the window, came back 2 days after they were locked out of the unit. They broke down one of the doors, spray painted Rick dye on the door over there because Rick, the maintenance guy, was the one that they were dealing with. They really didn't like Rick at that point. And left that there too. So, you know, they were a great bunch of people that were living in that apartment there. And that was my first of many introductions into the real estate business. I could go on for days about this property in particular. I had a heating system catch on fire. I had multiple other residents that we had to evict. We had our first hoarder where we took 2 30-yard dumpsters worth of stuff out of a studio apartment, no less, all in the same building. And that was my first deal. I don't know how I made it out of that one in one piece, but that was my first horror story of many. And I'm still here, I'm still in real estate, so even with Satanists and building fires and everything else, you too can be a real estate investor and make it through. So that's my story for the evening. Thanks for listening.